Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about building tall in Victoria 3 as part of our beginner tutorial playthrough here as Spain, where we will be showing every game action and explaining every single thing we do while focusing each episode on a particular aspect of Victoria 3. Now, a lot of people are coming from games like EU4 or CK3, and what they want to do is they want to build tall because they're used to building tall in those games. So the first thing we need to address is, generally speaking, building tall is weaker in Victoria 3 than it is in those other two games, especially in CK, where it is extremely strong. However, we can still do things to build tall in Victoria 3 in order to pursue some advantage, but we want to talk about a little bit at the beginning here why pursuing this is not as strong. This event is going to give us more enactment chance than the other one, so we're going to select this one as we kind of move through here. We do want to pass laissez-faire, but we don't have a lot of stall chance, so we can be a little bit more patient. We could have chose the other option for the Industrialist clout, but that's okay. Now, as we kind of come into this, one of the strong reasons why building tall in Victoria 3 is not as good has to do with the way in which you're acquiring resources and the way you're acquiring value. As we've discussed, all value, or most value, is produced on the back of buildings, and specifically buildings that are as profitable as possible. We also talked about how the resource industries are the very most lucrative, kind of per construction and per pop. When you consider both of these, they are the most lucrative type of building, generally speaking. The problem is that resources, we could see here in the resource tab, these are all capped out. So at a certain point, once you expand all these out, you will need new potentials elsewhere. And often, if you kind of take a look at the iron and you sort by potentials, often this will mean just expanding and acquiring more places on the map. And so you will be gated by your starting territories, and expansion becomes necessary. Now, we can import the iron in various ways, but unfortunately right now trade is weak in the game. And also, if we are importing iron, we are choosing to make our economy proportionally less resources, which is not as good as if you had expanded. Secondarily, us deciding to build tall in just 3 states, or 4 states, or 5 states, and kind of forgetting about the rest is kind of made worse by the fact that, okay, resources are the best, but also, whenever you're building resources, we have a sensitivity towards prices. We know that prices determine the profitability of buildings, and to kind of come back to local prices, the prices of the building are going to be such that they are influenced by the buy and sell orders locally in each state. They will be affected by MAPI, or market access price impact, and so only some of the price will be determined by the market price, and the rest will be determined by the local price. What this means is that when you are building iron, you want to also use the iron in the same state you are building it, which means building a bunch of iron, kind of all throughout our market, and then shipping it back to Spain can and is often less profitable than using the iron where it is built, unfortunately. And so this makes building tall a little bit worse as well. And so this is kind of the first one, but also, you get malices for building tall in a particular state in a couple of ways. The first is pollution. Now, pollution is going to be the threshold for pollution at which you start generating negative malices is going to have to do with how much arable land you have. The more arable land, the better. So generally, we are going to prefer to build tall in places where we have a lot of arable land. Castile is our province with the absolute most arable land here in Spain, and as you can see, the pollution impact will trend up and give us a lot of negative modifiers. In particular, of note, is minus migration attraction is going to be quite bad for us building up taller, because it's going to make it so that we can't have as much population in a given state, but also plus mortality is going to further make it more difficult, and minus standard of living is generally going to negatively affect both migration and also it's going to negatively affect population growth, net population growth, because it will decrease birth rate most of the time. And so as a result of this, well, birth rate is always decreasing, but it's going to decrease net population growth. Mortality increases or decreases faster than birth rate up to 20 SOL. But that's kind of a little bit of a tangent. Just know that most of the time this is going to further decrease the amount of pops you can get in an area. And so as a result, pollution is going to be a negative thing that affects us. We get popular playwright. There's kind of 2 options that are a little bit more reasonable. We could get success chance. We can get industrialist group attraction. We could get prestige. We keep on floating depending just on the ability to maintain major power, because if we go below 90, we will go to minor power, and we will actually really want to maintain major power, kind of coming up with something we're going to be doing for building tall. So we're actually going to choose the prestige, but usually the better option for this event will be the enactment chance. But again, we don't have too much stall chance. We're going to get laissez-faire through. It's just a matter of time. Now, the second factor is that there is also a mechanic for overpopulation, which will further decrease birth rate. You get it at 100k, or the mechanic starts to come into place with 100k times the arable land you have in the province. That's total arable land, including the ones that are being used. So here we can see that 6 stuff is being used. Our total arable land here is 70. We just have 6 of it being used. And so the population at which we will start incurring penalties is going to be 7 million. And so this will gate our ability to build tall. However, if you are going to build tall, you can choose states, like California, are going to be particularly good for building tall, because you will be having a ton of arable land here, and so this can support 30 million pops without incurring the penalty. And also, if we look at the migration attraction, we will see they have really high migration attraction. If we see why, a big part of this is unused arable land, which will allow you to attract more pops. And so arable land is kind of pretty important in terms of building tall, and so this is going to be something we go for. But also in terms of population, there's another kind of unfortunate thing. A lot of times when people talk about or think about building tall, they're thinking about being more productive, per population. And so if we come into here, we can see that, hey, well, we actually have like no workers employed here. But when we want to be more productive per person, we're going to want to use labor-saving PMs. This PM, rail transportation, would use 1,000 less workers. It would have an input of some, transportation here, and in return, we would use less workers, which means the workers that remain in the logging camps would be more productive. We'd be more productive per worker. Generally, you don't want to use too many labor-saving PMs as long as you still have peasants. You would rather turn peasants into laborers rather than, send these guys back to the peasantry by firing them off as laborers. And so generally speaking, as long as you still have peasants, you don't want to do this in order to make your pops more productive. It is really easy to get extra pops, especially if you are willing to expand. So we have in our entire country 13 million pops. If we just took one province off of China, we would go up, by 17 million pops. And then we could get these guys to migrate back. And so one of the strategies you have for being as economically efficient as possible is doing stuff, peeling states off of China, which isn't really what people mean when they mean building tall. And so often you will want to expand for population reasons as well. In addition to, if we run out of pop in our own provinces, we can acquire new provinces with pop and just build there. And often that is also a more effective means of expansion than, kind of building tall as we've mentioned this. We're not going to pass autocracy, so we're going to tell these guys to shove it. We do have a little bit of a duel here as well. When you have a duel, you will probably want to look at what ideologies these guys have, and if these ideologies are bad for you, you will want to let the duel proceed, and if they're good for you, you will want to stop the duel. This is kind of generally how we think through this. We are kind of relatively indifferent, but we know that petite bourgeoisie and Catholic Church can rule some pretty negative, ideologies as well. And also, if we put a stop to it, we can have them get negative popularity, and we don't really like either of these interest groups, so this is going to be how we approach it, and we're going to choose this, and we should put a stop to it. Kind of the fourth and final reason that building tall that is not going to be particularly good, as we've in terms of what we discuss, is that when you build tall, often the advantages for building tall, and we're going to discuss some of them, are going to be kind of capped. Specifically, the one that we're thinking of most is going to be throughput and the economies of scale bonus. This will have a cap, and so once you hit the cap, as a result of how the math works, you actively want to build in not the place that you're currently building in once you hit the cap for economies of scale, and so this is also going to make it worse for building tall in particular. But we want to build tall, so what can we do? Well, as we talked about, buildings are the source of value in Victoria 3. However, a lot of that value does not go to where it is, kind of created locally in terms of the building, and instead it is shipped back to where the owners of the building are in the form of financial districts. So as you can see here, we have all these yellow arrows pointing, and this is the different areas in which Toledo owns buildings, and you see some of these are, for example, overseas. We do have coal mines in Visayas, that's in the Philippines, and so while we are not producing the coal is still getting produced, it's being shipped to our country. What we are losing out on when we click on Visayas is the amount that's going to slave upkeep and wages is kind of stimulating their economy. It's still simulating our market because their wages are used to buy goods that are within our market, and also the slave upkeep is used to buy goods within our market. And so it's not a total hemorrhage, but where this weekly balance goes, which to be fair is only roughly a third of the total value, because a lot of the surplus value from this is going to pay wages and slave upkeep, but where this goes is to Toledo. And so we can focus on trying to get more financial districts in particular areas, or just get more ownership in general through our subjects, and subjects is a means by which we can try and create value. Now, just very briefly, also on the subject of subjects, they will often not use very good production methods. There's not much you can do about this. We have, I believe, condensing engine pump. They don't. And so if we own this coal mine, we would be able to implement a better PM, but the AI tends to be really bad about this. We could, for example, come over here to Cuba and show this off very easily because they are not even using sawmills here. This is an unfortunate little bit, and why us owning it would be better, but it is going to be a way by which we can expand value by having a lot more ownership overseas, while still maintaining just the core kind of territory here of Spain. We get this event, Discord within the Intelligentsia, as part of passing laissez-faire. We are just going to choose the option that gives us the most enactment chance, because we don't really want to curb down the Intelligentsia. We do like the Industrialists, but not so much more than the Intelligentsia, that we would rather have that than enactment chance. Also on the subject of subjects, which is our favorite subject, is the fact that they do pay us diplomatic pacts. So even though they are collecting some of the benefits of having wages overseas, which is that, for example, if they have an income tax or a per capita tax, those guys aren't paying any wages, but if these guys have income taxes or per capita taxes, they're getting paid out to Cuba. Well, a portion of Cuba's income is coming to us anyways, and we can do various ways to try and cultivate that up, and then we can use that money to pay for our own construction. Some of that construction is going to, you see, we are currently using entirely the private queue. Some of that construction is going to be fed back out into our subjects, like what we have over here in Visayas. We have coffee plantation being produced there. We have cotton plantations being produced in the Philippines, and so we are getting more value locally without needing to use our local labor. And so this is a way that you can try and kind of expand while still getting to play tall. Now, with financial districts, where they are is going to be where we want to build tall a little bit to some extent, and the place or the modifier that is most important for where they appear, and there are a lot of modifiers, so we're not going to get too into it, but the most important one is they really tend to group up in your capital. We know that arable land is important because it incurs malices when you don't have a lot of arable land. So what we will do here is we are going to move the capital from Madrid to the state in which we have the most arable land. There's reasons to kind of change it to other states. In particular, there is a modifier that's very, very advantageous to have in your capital, and that is if you have a river that is going to have a MAPI river bonus that is going to give plus market access price impact. This will allow you to buy and sell goods from the local economy in the place with this bonus much, much better if they are selling it elsewhere other than where it's produced locally. So if we produce a bunch of tools in Holland, we would be able to get other places to buy the tools, and it would affect our prices in Holland more positively as a result of us having this. Unfortunately, we don't have any states with those modifiers here in Castile. These just give infrastructure. These rivers aren't that great. And so what we will be doing is we will be going into state actions, and we will be changing the capital over here to Castile, which has a total of 70 arable land. So this means we can get up to 7 million pops here before we start getting overcrowded, and we can put in more PMs before we start feeling the effect of negative pollution here as well. Okay, so we want to get more subjects, and also increase the leverage by which these subjects give us bonuses, and one way in which we can do that is with the power blocks mechanic. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to form our own power block. This is going to make other people with a power block upset, but we are going to choose the Sovereign Empire power block. Trade League is the only one available if you do not have a Pivot of Empire DLC, as far as I can recall, but Sovereign Empire is probably the strongest. This gives minus weekly Liberty Desire for subjects. It's good for playing around subjects. We are going to do that here in Spain because we want to start building tall, which understandably is not the most efficient way to play, but it is a way you can play, and there are a lot of ways you can extract power from here. In particular, this will help us to maintain our power block because having low Liberty Desire will help out, but we have this principal group which we are going to slot in. Let's select Sovereign Empire. We have to select a mandate. It has to be from a primary principle of that power block, but what we're going to be selecting is vassalization, and this gives us, per subject we have, which we're going to collect a lot of as best we can, we are going to get 25 authority, and so we are going to be able to get more resources on the back of this. We will click submit. We will roll this a couple times until we decide we like what we see. There's a pack of Madrid. Shout out to Madrid. So we will do that. We will be a sovereign empire. We will form the power block, and we will get negative relations with all these guys. We'll focus a little bit more on diplomacy at a later time, but there is a reason to hold off on it if you want to improve relations with these guys first, so you don't give super negative ticks, but we'll worry about that later. And now we will see that we will get a little bit more authority. We are getting plus 50 authority per subject, and we see this is exactly what we're talking about. An anti-French society is formed due to the decrease in relations with France. When we said it's possible we want to improve relations with other countries first, but that is going to be all well and okay. Now what we can do is we can try and get other people to join our power block, and then we can use the Sovereign Empire ability to subjugate them and turn them into our power block. Of particular note, we are interested in Portugal. One, they're adjacent to us, so that's nice for nice looking borders, but also for us here in Spain, we do have the ability to form Iberia. If we get Portugal as a subject, we can form Iberia, and we could do this all without spending an ounce of infamy, which, to be fair, we haven't been spending anyways, which you should be spending, but we will kind of talk about that when we talk about the military. And so what we will do is we will engage in diplomatic actions in order to improve relations with them. But we also want to generate leverage on Portugal. That way we can pull them into our block. This leverage generation is going to be important for us, and so we will engage in a whole bunch of these so that we can do it. Britain declaring rivalry against us is actually pretty bad for us diplomatically. We're a little bit toasted. This is something you want to avoid, but this is a result of us forming the block. We will guarantee Portugal's independence. We will see that they won't accept any other types of agreements, but we will hope to get agreements with them in the future. In particular, we noticed they do have their own market. We would like to get a trade agreement with them. They would accept this trade agreement if we had a lot more volume of trade between our markets, and so we could do this, and we would also generate more leverage on them if we got this in. If we come and look at the power block, we can see where our leverage is trending. It's trending a lot higher now than it was before. Here, we barely had any before, and the reason for this is that we have guaranteed their independence, and so this is expanding. We would love to get a trade agreement with them as well. So what we will do is, you can just artificially just flood them with a bunch of agreements, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to take a look at what's expensive from them, and then we will try and export to them stuff that's expensive as long as the route is profitable, and then we will flip around and do the other end where we will look at stuff and see, hey, okay, this one will be profitable. We'll export small arms. We'll do this in a few spots. We'll take a look at this one as well. None of those are profitable, unfortunate, but we do see it would be profitable for us to import hardwood. We can't do it because they aren't selling enough hardwood. They're only selling 5. Can we import this? This is generally not profitable because it's cheap everywhere, but we'll just try and import it everywhere. Dyes is the one we generally can import really, really well from Portugal, but we see we're already importing it. We see arming the natives. We're really not concerned about the natives too much. I guess we don't want to deteriorate the relationship with New Granada, and so we will continue in this way. We are trying to do a little bit more trade with Portugal if we can. Well, we know we do want to build a lot of resource stuff, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and see if we can export specifically resource stuff, and we see we have an import prioritization still on iron, and also on the coal. Why don't we swap that over so that we can try and import more, and also put an export prioritization on wood. So we're going to come here, we're going to put export prioritization, we're going to come into here, and we're going to put export prioritization. We're going to come into the softwood or hardwood, we're going to put export prioritization, but our hardwood's more expensive than theirs, so we can't export it to them anyways. And we're going to come into the coal and put export prioritization. We want to be building more of these stuff ourselves, especially with water tube boiler unlocked here. And so what we are going to do is we're going to do that. And then I lied when I said we had water tube boiler. I think I said that. But this is going to make all of our things more profitable. And in turn, we should increase the volume of trade that we are doing with Portugal. We have an international manifesto. We don't mind the liberal movement getting a little bit more power, so that's fine. And now we're going to take a look at this trade agreement, and we can see we are, instead of getting 10 from volume of trade, we are getting 18 from volume of trade. This will also get easier for us to get this agreement once we get them to 50 relations, and we are improving relations currently, and so that's going to help out. The anti-French society we had just formed has a little bit of a thing. We can choose between legitimacy and a guy resigning. This guy is a royalist. We're kind of okay with the royalists right now because we are on sovereign empire. We can choose between this guy resigning and getting legitimacy, or getting rural folks become loyalists. Rural folks become loyalists is good, but we're right underneath that 50 breakpoint that is so key. So we are going to choose this, and we are going to get more legitimacy. Now, we have a little bit more authority as the result of having subjects, and that's just generally a good resource. But what it's particularly a good resource for is for building tall, because we've explored kind of two of the major uses for authority. We're doing consumption taxes, also floating authority. You can see we got a slight bonus to enactment time as a result of floating authority, but another one is going to be edicts. Now, edicts will boost a single state, and so the fewer states you have, aka the taller you are, the better edicts will be. If you have a single state, the edict is applying to your entire country. If you have 10 states, it's applying to just 10% of your country. But in particular, we're going to use road maintenance here in Castile, which is going to increase our state construction efficiency. So every point of construction we devote to building in Castile will be more useful. So this makes it easier for us to overcome some of the penalties that we have for building tall, because we are going to be, having effectively a discount on building tall into Castile. And then also we are going to come in and encourage manufacturing industries, which is going to give manufacturing industries throughput and also service industries throughput. Of particular note, services are something that's consumed a lot by really rich people. There's a lot of really rich people in financial districts. We're going to be getting more of those. And so the additional throughput that we experience here, as a result of this encouraged manufacturing industries, is going to make these buildings ridiculously more profitable. We see we could also do public trains. We're going to come into the thing and turn on that as well, because that will be an important PM. We do have to be in urban, of course, to turn on the public trains PM there. We see here in Castile that we have a lot of stuff that is owned by the government. We really do want everything to be privately owned, and I don't think we've gone through yet kind of this run in order to make sure everything's privately owned, but we want stuff to be privately owned, and we know now with the capital here in Castile that they will spawn more financial districts. We have a huge investment pool. What's going to happen is the investment pool is going to buy a whole ton of buildings. More financial districts will crop up specifically in Castile than in other places as a result of the modifier liking to place it there, and so we will enable privatization everywhere. Yikes, we forgot to turn on the condensing engine pump at the gold mines. That's not ideal. And you will see also our balance will likely improve, and also the amount of credit that we have is going to go down by around 2.8 million, which is definitely going to mean that we are paying less in interest as well, which is going to be very good for us. But again, interest is passed to our ownership class, so it's not like we're just straight up losing value here, and we will just need to wait a tick in order for this to happen. But we had 4 financial districts before. In fact, we still have 4, but in just a couple ticks, we are likely to see this number go up by quite a bit. as this drains out this 2.92 million as a result of the buildings being bought. We do have to wait for completion of one of these, I believe. Opposition puts forth demands. We will choose the enactment chance, I think. Well, we have plenty of enactment chance. We'll actually take a look here at the landowners. Landowners are actually super stoked with us because they have that market liberal that we recruited last episode. So yeah, we will acquiesce and push through a little bit faster here. Now we see we are wildly positive. We see this has come down 0.2 million, and if we take a look, hey, we got some new financial districts here in the capital. Now, there is another way for us to push taller even more and pursue throughput. We are getting manufacturing throughput. We're getting 20% more. And the way that throughput works is it increases the amount of input goods and it increases the output goods by this percentage. It doesn't increase wages. And so you will be getting the building more profitable, but also you will be increasing the margin because it means you have less wage per production of goods. And this is a very, very strong modifier to pursue. As you can tell, we are getting 20% from the edict that we put down, but we're also getting 2% from economies of scale. Economies of scale is a very strong modifier, and it can allow you to pseudo-specialize. Now, right now, trade is generally kind of weak in Victoria 3, and it is really hard to export goods. The reason why is while we are exporting this to Portugal, what it is doing is it's affecting the price in Portugal, but it's only affecting the price in the Portuguese market. It's not affecting the local prices of Portugal. So MAPI at both ends of trade is bad, or it makes trade worse, and this is something that they're going to change in 1.9 that they've said that they're going to address, but what's going on here is that MAPI is making it so we earn less when we're selling to another province out of, let's say, the capital here in Castile, and also they are still having to pay more even though we're exporting them, because when we export to them, we decrease their market price, right? And they also have export privatization, which doesn't help our ability to export to them. But they decrease their market price. They do not decrease their local price, and because their local price is not being decreased, this means they are still incentivized to build the stuff locally, and if they're incentivized to build the stuff locally, they will produce their own miniature economy that won't be specialized, and they're incentivized to do this as the result of MAPI. However, we can, to some extent, overcome that if we can produce iron way more efficiently than they can. And one of the ways we can do this is by pursuing having a lot of throughput, for example. So what we're going to do is we are going to add a bunch of iron mines in the capital here, which is going to give us more throughput on economies of scale. It is important to note that this scales really in a way that the additional marginal buildings are more valuable than the previous ones. For every level you have in a building, we will choose the minus 10% authority here. For every level you have in a building, right, you will get an additional throughput until it hits the cap. The cap is the unfortunate thing. It makes building tall not as good. But for us, the cap right now, it depends on our technology. We do not yet have the thing that improves the first cap in the first place. This will give us plus 20. Shift work will give us this will give us plus 10. Shift work will give us plus 20. At base value, you have 20 economies of scale. And the way it's going to work is as we build, public address goes awry. Oh no. I think we'll just scrap the current draft because we are 86% super high. And we don't need to worry about the setback overall. But when we get an economy of scale level, it's going to be more valuable the more of it you already have, as long as you're under the cap. And the way that this works is, if we have an economies of scale of 2, and we go from our first building to our second building, that second building is effectively worth 103% of the building. Yes, it's worth 103% of a building because we get that one building that was worth 102% of a building, the marginal building, the second building, and then in addition, the building that was there previously went from being 1% throughput to now 2% throughput, and so we effectively get an extra 1% of a building, moving us up. You could see that our iron price is dropping, which in turn is helping us to be able to export this iron because we can feed it to other countries easier. But as we were saying in regards to the throughput, When you build your 50th building, that's the absolute max throughput, it's actually worth 199% of a building. And the reason for this is you get 150% of the building from the 50th building, right? Because it's got 50% throughput, but also the previous 49 buildings go from 49% throughput to 50% throughput. And so in this way, it brings it up even higher, right? And so the value is 199% of the building. However, every building after that is worth 150% of a building. And so mathematically, what you want to do is eventually we're going to want to push this tooling workshop up to level 50. But then once we push it up to level 50, why don't we put it on auto expand? It is on auto expand. Once we push this up to level 50, the problem is then us building a 51st, tooling workshop here is mathematically not as valuable as us moving this from 5 to 50 in terms of how all the math shakes out, because we would like to get this guy's throughput up to 50% if we had the full economies of scale cap. And so this is something that encourages you to build, kind of wide. But as we stand now, what we can do is we can push economies of scale, in particular in Castile. We're going to also need to pay for more infrastructure here. That's kind of a separate thing. And we also need some in Asturias. We can push economies of scale really, really hard, and in doing so, we can get more throughput, and we can make it so that we have an advantage relative to other countries. We get a good vintage. Shout out to Prestige. I think we'll choose the Prestige just because we need to stay at a major power or higher in order to keep our power block. But what we can do is we can specifically push Tooling Workshop and try and specialize. We can push these in order to be able to trade. Now, the problem is when we push economies of scale, and trade is how we solve the problem, actually. When we push economies of scale, what's going to happen to the tool price? Right? Well, locally, we're going to have a lot more sell orders than buy orders of tools, and so that's going to decrease the price. And also within our market, we're going to have less buy orders and sell orders of tools, and so this is going to decrease the price. As the price comes down, tooling workshops will get less profitable. So if we just build a ton of tools workshops, we'll just collapse the price. None of them will be profitable in our market, and this will be a bit of a problem. The solution for us is going to be exporting these things. And as we export, we will increase the price, which allows us to pursue a higher economies of scale. And so this used to be really, really strong in earlier patches before MAPI came into play. But we can see we can export tools now to the Portuguese market. And so this will help us to increase the price of tools, but it will also help us to the aim that we've had of getting them into our power block. We can see we are trending towards a higher value, but now we are stalling out a little. However, we are trying to get these pacts, right? These various pacts that we can try and get. And we can see that last time we were on plus 18, now we're on plus 20 in terms of volume of trade between our market. They used to owe us an obligation, and now they don't anymore. We see the acceptance has been hurt. The problem is their attitude towards us is now cautious. That is a bit of a problem. One that's not so easy to rectify because we already have above 50 relations with them, so increasing above a threshold won't do it. We see their attitude has changed. Is this because we went over 50 relations? It very well might be. Whenever you change a relation tier, you can provoke what is known as a diplomatic catalyst. That's how we provoked it with France and Spain, and why they turned on us, because we decreased relations. Here we see attitude has gone up above 50, and I think that is the driver of why this has popped up. But now they're willing to accept some stuff, and what they're doing is they're offering us foreign investment rights in their country, which is exactly what we want. It's going to help us to build tall, because now we can use our construction in their country and ship the value back to our country. But also, in addition to this, it's going to generate us a whole lot of leverage. Specifically, one of the best ways to generate leverage, let's kind of come back into taking a look at the block here. One of the best ways to generate leverage is from economic dependence. If we have, there's a bunch of unclaimed leverage. No. If we had more economic dependence on us, we can see they have 4 from economic dependence. They're basically completely independent from us. As we own a bigger share of their economy, we will get more economic, or they will get more economic dependence on us, which will make it easier for us to pull them into the power block. there's a bunch of other modifiers in here too. Sharing cultural traits is important. Having similar religion or not discriminated religion is important. Primary culture with high acceptance is important. But we already are in good place to be able to get Portugal in order to do this. And so we are going to pursue this as well. We see the Spanish-French Association wants us to declare rivalry with the Netherlands, a known opponent of French interests. So let's take a look at our interest group. We see the Spanish-French Association. They're a little pissed at us. Unfortunately, you really don't like having a pro-association and a negative association at the same time, but we do have an anti-Dutch league. You know, there's only two types of people we hate in this world: people who are intolerant to other people's cultures and the Dutch. And so what we can do is we can rival the Dutch, make these interest groups happier, so we're going to look into this, and also make our pro-Spain or France agreement more... our pro-France lobby also more happy. So taking a look here, we see the Anti-Dutch League. It consists of the Intelligentsia, the Industrialists, and the Landowners, and also the French-Spanish Association is the Intelligentsia. So if we take a look here, Intelligentsia, not too happy with us right now. Well, what we can do, if we declare rivalry on the Netherlands, we will get a whole bunch of approval in multiple spots here, where the Intelligentsia will now like us a whole lot more, some other groups like us more. We're a big fan of that. You know, we weren't going to talk too much about diplomacy this episode, but I think that since both France and UK or Great Britain are quite scary, we are also going to be improving relations with them here. We can research a tech. Why don't we move towards researching the tech that allows us to build even taller and lean into economies of scale? This will get stronger as trade gets buffed, but right now it's going to... the trade value might not be worth building towards local mapping considerations. And so what I mean by that is pursuing an economies of scale of 30 or 20 in the iron mines here might not be as valuable as, you know, building more iron mines over here because we have local construction here, or as, you know, building wood instead of iron, this type of stuff. But why don't we... actually, wood's incredibly efficient. We're going to actually build some wood out. It's not really as tall in the capital, but we're just going to add some to the queue just because it's so incredibly efficient. We continue to get corn laws events. We're just going to choose the ones that give us more minimum wage. But also, very importantly, we have a new company slot as a result of us passing laissez-faire. And we are talking about wanting to specialize, wanting to be really, really good at producing like iron and coal so that we can export them, so that we can generate leverage, economic dependence, these types of things. Well, we have an opportunity for that with one of the best companies, if not the best company in the game. This is the best company in the game. We cannot slot it in right now. That is unfortunate. Let's check what we need in order to establish it. We need Asturias to have an incorporated state. It is incorporated, and then it needs to have coal mines greater than or equal to level 3. We only have coal mines level 2 here. So why don't we do this? We're going to put it at the front of the queue. We really do want it to be built immediately because what this is going to do is a company is going to give bonuses that will allow us to really, really ramp up because we see here's another source of throughput. Company throughput bonus is going to be giving us 43% throughput. That's huge, and it will allow us to export these goods better. Even through the MAPI penalties, we will be able to hopefully export these goods. So we do need to get this coal mine constructed in order to do this, and I do think we need to get it purchased by a private investor before we will be able to form Duro y Campania. This is one of the best companies because the requirements for it are incredibly low, and it has two of the best resources to be focused on in the early game, which is going to be iron and coal, and it also incidentally has steel as well. We see it move, or we got pump faked. We saw it move. I thought that was because we could form it. But this one's going to be incredibly good. Generally, an iron company is going to be the best starting company because you decrease the price of iron in your market, or you decrease the equilibrium price that is going to be really, really profitable of iron, because when you have more throughput, this means that a building can still have the same level of weekly balance. As you have more throughput, it will have the same level of weekly balance with a lower price of iron. So we can tolerate a lower and lower price of iron, which means we're going to be paying less for our construction goods because these are almost entirely iron, while still simultaneously getting to build more and more iron mines. And it also means the lower price means we can export more, or which is going to, you know, help to buoy up the iron prices, because if we buoy up the iron price, we can lean into having more throughput and building for throughput for economies of scale as well. We're going to take this out though, because as we will see, companies also give a huge construction bonus, and we would kind of prefer that the companies be the ones constructing the buildings, which creates a weird sort of tension. I do think they're going to rework companies at some point here, but we will slot in Duro e Campania, and the buildings that are owned by Duro e Campania, let's see where it appeared. We're not sure exactly where we got the Duro e Campania. It did appear in Navarra. This is going to be a specialized financial district, effectively, that only builds iron mines, steel mills, and coal mines, and it will be applying to them, if we look in Navarra, a really, really hefty throughput bonus. We can see Duro e Campania in Navarra is giving a 40% throughput bonus. So Navarra, as a result of being the headquarters of Duro e Campania, is going to really expand this iron mine in particular. It's going to be a very, very strong place for us, and this is maybe another place that we would want to build tall. Let's check the arable land. 50. That's respectable for what we have as Spain. So what we're going to do is we are going to pull back a couple consumption taxes here. That's not an important one. We're going to pull back a couple consumption taxes, and we are going to put down a couple decrees. We are going to do road maintenance in Navarra, and also we are going to encourage manufacturing industries in Navarra. We see we have a little bit of excess, authority. We could use that to float, to pass stuff a little bit faster, but that's generally really strong in the early game specifically. Instead, we'll do this. We also notice, hey, we have quite a bit of positive balance here. Really a big amount, because you want to look at your balance plus the investment pool. Us selling all the stuff to the capitalists really helped out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to expand construction here, and we're going to expand it in Castile, because we're trying to build the iron price high in Castile. And that's actually probably too many construction sectors. That's a lot. That's a lot. But we're going to add 5 in Castile here. We see we're also having a problem with the bureaucracy. So we're going to sort by see if any place does not have any sort of tax. But something to consider is, okay, we don't have a place that has negative tax. We're going to hit a couple of these that are under 50 so that they'll be far away from the penalty. We're going to hit Navarra twice because we're going to be building there a little bit more. But then we know that throughput, it increases the input goods, and it also increases the outputs. We know that, in particular, if we take a look at this, most of the cost of running a government administration is actually in the wages here. And so this means that throughput is extremely valuable on government administration. So we're going to come in here, and we are going to add 5 there. That's maybe a little bit too many, but we are going to expand this and add to the throughput bonus, because we know as we get a higher and higher throughput bonus, the value of the building is going to increase more and more, because you have increasing returns on marginal buildings until you reach the throughput cap, at which point you don't. We can also pass a new law here, and in particular, we would love free trade here. Free trade will allow us to actually trade a whole lot more. We are going to see if we can slot either the Intelligentsia or the Industrialists into government in addition with our landowners to help us pass this law a little bit easier. It doesn't look like we can slot them in without decreasing below this 50 legitimacy kind of threshold. So instead we will do this but we do want free trade. It will allow us to export a whole lot better and import a whole lot better, and it will also decrease our leverage resistance, which isn't something we're concerned about because we have our own block. We'll credit the Industrialists for now. Later on, we'll be crediting not the Industrialists, the workers. But we don't want to employ a traditionalist guy, so we will choose the other option here, and we will check in on how things are going with Portugal. We are now positive in our leverage generation on Portugal. We need to get this number up above 200 in order to pull them into the block. So let's see. We have problematic policing. Ugh, the truth hurts. I think that we are going to Pops and Glacia, or we're going to improve French relations over Pops and Glacia being happier with us. But we see that we could get a trade agreement if we gave them an obligation, which is a little bit of an interesting one. We could try and increase the volume of trade with them instead. Which is something that, let's do that in order to get a trade agreement. And so let's take a look at their market again. We see that they have, we're going to look at where they have really cheap goods again. We can't really, this is because we're dumping them iron. They're not using it yet, that the iron is so cheap. They they don't have an export prioritization on it. So their tariffs are making it, oh, but we don't have an import prioritization on this. So we are going to put import prioritization. We will do that one, try and pass free trade faster. And what we are going to do is we're going to come into here and we are going to try and increase our volume of trade with them. We cannot import this stuff. We can maybe import fabric. We're going to import it even though it's not profitable. That's going to be not the biggest deal. We're going to see if we can import or export clothes. We can import basic clothes. We'll import that from the French and the British, because us getting a trade agreement with them will also give us ticking positive relations. This is also a reason to pursue trade agreements, is it makes it easier to maintain positive relations with everyone. We will see if we can import tea from them, because we know they have overseas colonies. We can. Can we import wine from them? We cannot. But we cannot do it profitably, but we can do it. So we will do that. We'll make sure this is on import prioritization. It's not. We will make sure the tea is on import prioritization, so we can import more of it. We'll make sure silk is. The silk is. I think we checked dyes already, and so... what about fruit? We'll put this on import prioritization. We will see if we can import fruit. I kind of have a suspicion we don't, because the AI was not very good at doing the PMs. We get a tick on our passing of free trade. We are going to choose the one that is just going to give us some enactment with negative approval on the rural folk here. That'll be fine enough for us. And now we will check and see. Now we're at just 9. So we've increased this number from 20 to 28, I think, to 30, and so now we just need a little bit more acceptance score. So we'll take a look at the market, and what we can do is we can anticipate that we will want to export sulfur from them at some point, that we will want to try and export this from them to them at some point. If they ever start using PMs that utilize it, this will be fine for us. We can try exporting paper, really not expecting it to be profitable. We can try, we're already trying to export that. We are trying to export finished goods, goods we would rather specialize in. We can export this, or we can import it. Really, either way is kind of fine. This is less unproductive, so we're going to choose this one. And right now we're just artificially juicing up our volume of trade with them. We're already exporting that. Can we export this? Can we import it? Either one looks unprofitable. Import looks a little bit better. And importing furniture will also make some sense because it will increase our own standard of living here. And so we are going to do that. We can export profitably porcelain now. We couldn't when we took a little while ago. And hey, we got above the threshold. And now we're going to do a trade agreement. We're going to generate mutual leverage on each other, which is going to be useful for forcing the equilibrium to force the other countries out of consideration here. So this should improve a little bit for us. As we gain more. So we are trending to a leverage advantage of 36. Currently, we need to get this above 200, and we also see the economic dependence is increasing. Now, because we're on laissez-faire, there is this weird environment where we do not want to actively build on them like we would if we had interventionism. We could, but we instead want our capitalists to build in their country. But our capitalists are getting fat and rich. We expanded construction a whole lot. If we look at the private queue, we can see where they're building. We would prefer that this be in Portugal, but there isn't too much we can do in order to force that through. We will choose extra enactment here, but will hurt our bureaucracy and some other things. We see we have a pretty strong amount of authority, so what we can do is we can increase this temporarily, get above the threshold where we can put in another, kind of tax here and put that in, and we see that we're still making tons and tons and tons of money, really ramping up quite nicely here. And so what we are going to do is we are going to make sure we have infrastructure here. Yikes. And so why don't we add construction in Navarra now? Which we know is going to have really nice of this. It's all owned by Duro y Campagna. It has a ton of throughput. This is really pushing down the price of iron, which is one of the reasons why we are blasting construction now and still kicking up really nicely. You can see that we were stalled out just before the start of this episode. This is the start of this episode. We get another dual event. We're going to check. We don't like traditionalists. We're fine with the moderate maybe dying. And so we will kick that in, really working on getting Portugal in here, though, and it's going to take some time. So with that, I think that we're going to conclude, well, let's do this and then conclude the episode. we will take some free enactment chance, I think. And we are going to conclude here. So there's a lot of things that you can do to try and increase, kind of your ability to build tall. In particular, we're implementing some of them. A big one is going to be the decrees, which we are kind of pushing through right now, where we are trying to build tall in Castile and Navarra. Another big one is going to be subjects and building in subjects and building up your ownership class. In particular, subjects, with us going a power block for Sovereign Empire, are also giving us 25 authority, which are helping us to further improve, our ability to build tall, because they are allowing us to run more edicts. Of note, also, Sovereign Empire will have a power block. They will have their own power block statue, which is going to have the Sovereign Empire statue, which is going to give minus decree cost. So why don't we also put that in, because this will allow us to run even more decrees. At the back of the queue, we will put in power block statues here, which will refund us, with all 4 of these considered, 100 authority, which will allow us to run more edicts, help us to build taller. We are gaining advantages here in our ability to specialize right now, which is we are gaining advantages in ability to specialize right now on the basis of stacking a lot of extra throughput. And the way we are doing it is by building tall in a couple of ways. One is kind of producing the economies of scale for the iron mines in particular, and the other is for using the manufacturing decree, which is encouraging us to build in places where we have this decree, which for right now is Castile and Navarra, and so we're building tall there, and that should help out. We talked about at the front, some of the penalties for building tall. Building tall isn't really too strong relative to building wider, but I do think building tall in the capital specifically is almost always going to be good because of this 20% throughput bonus on the urban centers, in addition to just building more manufacturing there. So I do think that's going to be good. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I think next episode we're going to focus a little bit more on diplomacy and military. We do see Mexico did get shanked a little this episode, which is a bit unfortunate while we weren't looking. Other than that, you guys have a good day.